Hi, I'm Claire and this is a reading wrap-up. Today we are going to talk about books 11 through 15 that I read this year, this batch of book right here. I'm very surprised that I actually managed to get a batch of 5 books that I've read that I all own physical copies of. This means that I actually read 5 whole books off of my physical TBR, which is, something that I could do with doing more of, so well done me for that. So the first of those books was The Future of Another Timeline by Annalee Newitz. This is a time travel-y, politics-y, feminism-y book, which I thought that I would absolutely adore. And I have to say, I liked it, but not as much as I thought I would. It's kind of one of those, maybe 4 stars that I was firmly convinced was going to be a 5-star, so maybe I hyped it too much in my head, I don't know. The Future of Another Timeline is a time travel book. It is set in a world where time travel exists and it is being used by various different people to alter the timeline for political aims. We follow 2 main characters, Teth and Beth, and those 2 women, one of them is from the future compared to us now, where the time travel is widely known. She studies time travel and the different timelines and all of that. And then Beth is a teenager in the 90s. She's in the kind of grunge punk alternative scene, lives in California with a fairly strict family and kind of escapes in this world of concerts and parties and gigs and all of that. And it's kind of the story of how these 2 women's lives intersect. There's a lot of twists and turns, some of which I enjoyed, some of which I didn't enjoy so much. The really main kind of thrust of the story is that Tess in the future is part of a group, a secret group that is trying to change the timeline to gain more rights for women and other minorities. They have this thing where when they get together, they talk about what it is that they remember, because of course as soon as you change an event in the past, it kind of changes the future and it changes what they remember or not. When they get together and they talk about what they remember, none of them remembers a past where women have ever had the vote or reproductive rights, and it's terrifying to behold. But it's not just big events. Of course, these changes in a timeline also affect people, whether it be, a specific person who's disappeared from the timeline and the memory of everybody else because they were murdered in an earlier version of the timeline, or whether it is one person who remembers something that happened to them or to a friend when they were kids and they want to prevent that from happening. All those good tenets of time travel where it's can you change the past? Can you try to affect anybody's life? Can you actually make lasting changes? And can you really have an impact, or is everything kind of paradoxically set in stone because the reason you started in the first place was because there was this thing you needed correcting, and so it'll always be there? All of these questions are explored, and that is what I really enjoyed about the book. I thought the character stuff didn't work as well for me. I still have questions. Basically, my point is, if you're gonna do twists and turns and switcheroos, I want to understand once the switcheroo has happened. I want to go oh yes, of course, that's obvious because of this clue and that clue and whatever. And I feel in this book some of the twists and turns made sense, and some of them I was just wait, how? And especially in this book with some of the changes that happen in the timeline through the book, some of the victories that the characters achieve, by the end I'm but doesn't that mean various things intersect that maybe shouldn't? Or it is quite difficult to talk about without massive spoilers, so I'm trying to be vague and I'm not sure I'm making the most amount of sense, so I'm sorry about that. The main plot and the time travel stuff really works for me. Some of the individual character beats don't work as well. The resolution at the end and the final, you know, like where everybody is at the end of the book, I thought that was pretty good, pretty fun. One of the characters in this book is a woman who's come from the future, who's come from a future where women's rights, you know, have kept evolving in this like terrible, horrible direction. And it's bad. It's real bad. Woohoo, it's bad. But I did really enjoy the way that, especially women, because we follow a lot of women characters, but women from different eras with different cultural backgrounds work together, and the way that, you know, their friendships are represented. There's a lot I love about this book. Thing is, for me, there are bits that are still nagging about the main character and what was going on with the main character that prevent me from saying this is a 5-star book. But this for me worked pretty well. I enjoyed it, not as much as I thought that I would. There are bits of it that I'm a little bit iffy on, but overall really liked it. Yeah, more time travel with more politics in it, please. That bit was great. Next up, I read The Hidden Witch and The Midwinter Witch by Molly Knox Ostertag. These are both the sequels to The Witch Boy, again by Molly Knox Ostertag, which I read last year. Really enjoyed that book. It was adorable, and these two further volumes continue to be really good. The first book, The Witch Boy, follows Aster, who is a boy born in a family where all the women are witches and all the men are shifters. And Aster, our protagonist, is a boy, but he does want to study witchcraft. He wants to be a witch. He's not interested in shape-shifting, but he's interested in witch magic. And the first book, he basically spends like trying to convince his family to let him study witch magic, and we kind of see him fighting with this demony creature in the woods and kind of learn all the backstory of this creature, which is really sad. And in these two books we continue the story of Aster and his friends. The Hidden Witch is about a witch who doesn't know, or of course she knows that she has magic, but she doesn't know that there are communities of witches and wizards around, that there are families that can teach her stuff. And so it's kind of about reaching out to this new witch and kind of getting her involved with the family. And then in The Midwinter Witch, the whole group, Aster's family and Aster's friends, all go to the Midwinter Games, which are organized by Aster's family as, you know, a place to test your magic and talk about new discoveries and like test your powers and stuff. And at the Midwinter Games there is a like competition between all of the witches to see who has the best witch magic, and between all of the shapeshifters to see who has the best shapeshifting magic. And of course, when they go to the Midwinter Games, Aster wants to enter as a witch, and everybody else who's not in his immediate family flips out about it. And there is also a subplot in this third book about the character we meet in book 2, The Hidden Witch, about like her being included in the family even though she's not a part of the family, and who her biological family might be, and the dark side of magic. So that's all very kind of spooky and cool. Those two books I really loved. I don't really know what else to say without just like telling you what happens all in the book. My neighbors in the garden have just noticed that I'm recording videos and we're just looking up and waving at me, so that's great. Those books are really fun. I would recommend them. I really enjoyed reading them. Sometimes with young adult or middle grade graphic novels, it kind of feels a little didactic. It feels a little like this would have been great for me if I'd read it at the right age, but now it's kind of, you know, I can see the lessons it's trying to teach me, but this is just really entertaining. This is something that I could see work really well for a much younger kid, but also I just really enjoyed reading it. I love the characters, I love what you get to learn about the magic, and I like the lessons that you are seeing in it. Obviously, they are lessons about being good friends, being good neighbors. I will have to see when I do my actual like tallying up of reviewing figures where I rank those, but I would assume it would be like pretty much 4.5 or 5 stars because I just really enjoyed reading them. Usually I do my stars rating before I film these videos, and I just realized when I started recording that I'd forgotten to do that. Next up, I read The True Queen by Zen Cho. This is the sequel to her first book, Sorcerer to the Crown. And we are back in the same world of that first book, but instead of following Zacharias and Prunella like we did in the first book, we are following two sisters, Muna and Sakti, who wake up on the distant shore of Jandabaik, an island in the Malay archipelago. They have no memories of how they got there. They do not know anything except for the fact that they are sisters and they know their names, and that's about it. They are taken in by a powerful witch on the archipelago who is like trying to help them figure out like their memories and what's going on. One of the sisters has magic and the other does not. The story is narrated by Muna, who doesn't have any magic, as she watches her sister Sakti slowly like fade from existence, basically, and they need to figure out what is wrong with Sakti and make sure that she doesn't disappear from existence. In order to do that, they go all the way to England to consult with Prunella White, the Sorceress Royal, and just figure out what's going on. And so from then you have a really like intriguing story that I liked even more than the first book. I loved the first book. I'm fairly sure I gave Sorcerer to the Crown 5 stars. This was also a 5 stars read for me. Absolutely no contest for that. I knew the premise of this book before I got it because it was one of my very highly anticipated reads for last year, I think it came out, or this year. What is time even? But I was excited for this book, and so I knew the premise, but when I started reading it, and what's happening is that Sakti actually has a hole in the middle of her tummy where it's just like nothing, you can't see anything. It's like the Invisible Man, but you can like stick your arm through and wiggle your fingers in the back because it's actively nothingness, right? And it's just so creepy the way that it's described. And then they have to like walk this path between Malay and England in the land of fairy, and Sakti gets lost there. Muna can't find her anymore, and so obviously she's even more worried about like what might happen to her, because it's not just that she's disappearing, it's now she's actually disappeared. And Muna herself doesn't have any magic, but the thing is, the Sorceress Royal doesn't actually know that. So Muna has to like pass herself off as having magic when she gets there. It's really, really cool. I really enjoyed the mystery aspect of it. I think in the first book, as much as I enjoyed the world and the world building and the characters and all of that, the central like plot and the mystery running through wasn't the main thing for me that I liked about it. I thought it was really, really well done, and I thought there were really gripping aspects about it, but I was more in it for the world and the characters, whereas in this, although I loved the world and I loved Muna as a character even more than Zacharias and Prunella, I was really into like the mystery of what was going on as well through the plot. It had this really great thing that mysteries sometimes do, where you're reading and you're kind of following, and like you're thinking, oh, I think I know where this is going, and you kind of get there like 2 minutes before the book does. And so when the book gets to its big reveal, you're like, I knew it! But you're not stuck going, oh my god, we know it's really obvious, for a long time before you get to the book doing the reveal. You just have a bit of an idea. Your hunch keeps being more and more confirmed. And so like for me, the pacing of the mystery aspects of this worked super, super well. There's a very sweet relationship that moves towards romance in this book. It works really, really well. There's more of the dragon characters who I really loved in the first book. It was great. Highly recommend if you've not read this series yet. So great. Going from strength to strength. Don't know what Densho is doing next, apart from the fact that she has a novella out with Tor.com in June. I will be reading basically anything she puts out in future. And finally, I read The Black Tides of Heaven by J.Y. Yang. This is the first novella in their Tensorit series, which right now has 4 novellas out. I'm not sure if it's actually finished or not. If you've read all 4 of them, please do let me know. This is the first of the books, and it is about Mokoya and Akeya, who are the children of the Protector in this secondary world fantasy. They have been given away to the Grand Monastery as children children to be raised by the monastery. Whilst they are there, Mokoya starts developing this prophetic gift, which of course means that now everybody wants to get their hands on the twins, and specifically on Mokoya because of their gift of prophecy. And of course, Akeya just wants to stay with their sibling. On top of the personal story of Mokoya and Akeya, you've also got the background of the whole country, the protectorate, which is being run with an iron grip by Mokoya and Akeya's mother, the protector, who, you know, is maybe not the best of rulers from the point of view of the people of this country. There is a rebellion brewing called the Machinists, who are challenging the protector's rule, and so it's a lot about Mokoya and Akeya growing as people, deciding who they want to be. There's some gender discussion in here as well. This is a world where people don't have an assigned gender as they are growing up, and then they get confirmed in the gender that they identify as later in life. And so there's some questions of, you know, what are Mokoya and Akeya going to be confirmed as? How do they identify? Now, I quite enjoyed this story. There is a lot that is packed in a fairly small book. The world building is fascinating. What you see of the protectorate really intrigued me, particularly with the protector being such a iron-willed, kind of fairly merciless kind of person who just really has her own needs and wants in her sights, and is very cunning about acquiring things that benefit her and not letting other people win one over on her. You get that from the very, very beginning of the book. Also, the way that Mokoya and Akeya are relating to this person who is their mother, but also, more importantly, the protector, and someone they have to kind of wrestle with politically. I think for me, the story maybe jumped a little fast between different parts of the story, because it starts with Mokoya and Akeya as children, and then it kind of moves through a bunch of their lives quite quickly. The shape of the storytelling is not maybe what I was expecting, so I found some of it almost a little bit jarring, like we were moving fairly quickly from one bit of the story to the next. But that being said, when I'm thinking back to what those bits of story actually are, what they do, what characters we're introduced to, all of it was really good, and all of the characters I cared about and I was invested in. I think maybe I would have been more interested in spending more time in Mokoya and Akeya's later lives. That is starting to be chronicled towards the end of the book, but that is probably what the sequels are going to be about, so I should check those out. Of course, but I think it wouldn't work as well if you didn't have all the context of having the earlier books. What I'm saying is I would like more in this world, and it's fine because I'm gonna get more in this world. I've got 2 of the 3 sequels here already. I have the Red Threads of Fortune and the Descent of Monsters, so I'm going to be reading those. I don't know when, but I'm going to be picking them up in the near future. I mean, I will probably also order the 4th book, because look at this. I mean, look at these covers. They're so beautiful. I'm absolutely going to want to own the 4th one as well. So that said, these were the next 5 books that I read this year. I hope you enjoyed this reading wrap up. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts about them, if you have any recommendations for me based on what I talked about in this video. Let me know. Let's chat in the comments, and I will see you very soon. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check out a previous video on screen right now. And if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button that's on my face for a new video from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.